Guys for being here tonight. I guess my first question is, I know that Darren Aronofsky had worked on developing this for a while. We see that in the script from Noah Oppenheim. And I'm curious, can you talk about how you sort of all came on board the project? Like, how you came in, and because it was in different sort of pieces, and it's sort of a little unconventional story to some other films.
I went to a film festival in Berlin, and Darren was the head of the jury. And then we met in a party, and then a week after he sent me the script. It's a script that I had read at least 5 years ago, I think so. And then I met Darren, and I asked him why he was coming a Chilean to make this movie. And then right after that, I did ask for him to help me to get to Natalie, and it was all like a condition. I thought she was, I don't know, the only possible option for my eyes for this movie. And then later on the project, once the movie was about to get made, we met Mickey, and Mickey came on board and made it happen.
So now I'll ask you first. I know you had spoken, or I've heard that you spoke to Darren about it a couple of years ago, when he was first working on possibly directing it. But when it came back, what made you want to tackle the project now and work with Pablo?
Yeah, well, Darren had sent it to me like 5 or 6 years ago, I think, when he first got the script from Noah. And he didn't want to direct it at that point. He only was going to produce it, so he was trying to figure out directors, and it was never really the right thing. And then he said, you have to see this director's work. Pablo, of course, that he was talking about, and meet him, and then we met, and it was just clear that he was going to take the film in a very, I guess, unexpected direction, and always push me to explore in different ways than you usually get to. So it was really, I saw that it was a good adventure.
And Mickey, how did you come on board?
Yes, I was sent the script, and Natalie was attached, and Pablo at the time, and many of the other actors. But I read the script and just fell in love with it. I was a huge fan of Natalie's and Pablo's work. And then Pablo and I talked, and I heard the vision, and I think I was going to an airport or something. I remember I was talking like that, and I remember thinking, like, I have to do this. This is a project that's really timely and really important. So I got involved right away.
Well, I'm curious, Pablo, and Natalie as well. There's these great moments in the film where Jackie is just walking around the White House. She's just sort of experiencing, sort of post-traumatic syndrome, I guess, in some way of what has happened. Was that in the script? Was that something you guys sort of came up with, on your own, that you sort of felt would have happened? Was it just alluded to in what Noah had written? Like, how did that sort of, those sequences come about?
Well, what happens is that, again, since I'm not American, I couldn't sort of assume many things that were on script, like, for example, the camera movement. And of course it was very important, but I was trying to understand it very, very clearly. And since I didn't know the story very well, the first thing I did, it was like to listen to the music, because all this myth starts from JFK listening to this record before going to bed, and it's like, what is that record like? Can we just listen to it? And at some point, it was not easy to get at the beginning, and then I got it, and I was shaking when I remember I got, what is this? And then I played it, and then I called Noah, and I suggested him to include this sequence that Natalie was very scared at the beginning to do. I remember, because it was like, because he wrote it in a way that it was like, kind of, as it is, but if you read it, it could feel dangerous, because you're like drinking and taking pills and trying dresses and walking around the White House, and what is this, and it's probably something that I'm almost sure I can assure you that it never happened, of course, so it's pure fiction, I think so, and but I thought it would be beautiful to have her doing it, because to me, what she's doing is trying to understand who who she is somehow, and she's in a way dressing for him, and trying all those dresses and trying to understand where is she and what is, you know, what's going through her body, her mind, her soul, and I don't know. And also it's a kind of a farewell to the White House as well. So visiting old rooms for the last time, and then sort of making it very private, and I don't know. And I remember we keep taking out all the Secret Service people. So you know, she says they wouldn't look at her, and it was like, well, they should be here because it's the White House, and let's just take them out, you know. And it was like everything was a little bit kind of fake, you know. If you look at it, if you think about it, it's not real, because there should be a lot of people everywhere, and it's nobody. And that sort of ghost place, it's just because she's somehow a ghost for a little bit, and yeah, that's how I related to the camera thing, starting from the music. Because I don't know if you know the story, JFK's, the guy who wrote the music was JFK's roommate at college. So he followed him all of his life, and when they released the record or the musical, he was very close to the story, not just in terms of because he loved it, he knew the guy. So there are multiple connections, and there's something for me that is a little bit absurd and beautiful at the same time, is to play that kind of music in the White House, which is sort of, you know, it creates a big friction between the two worlds in terms of those British people singing about Canada, and then all this in the United States. It creates, to me as foreigner, something that is just like a beautiful friction, and it creates a very unsettling and beautiful feeling in it.
Well, the sounding question for you is, you know, how did you research, you know, I know that Jacqueline did a bunch of interviews a couple of years later, or I think the first one was maybe a year later, where she talked about what had been on, and there's audio tapes that people can listen to where she talks about it, but where did you find sort of the material or your instinct about what her sort of state of mind was at the time? Like, how did you find that for the performance?
Well, there are actually interviews she did in the week and months after the assassination, which was wild. That was part of Noah's inspiration, that she was so conscious already of preserving the legacy even in the middle of the grieving process. So you do see some of that in there. And I think the most helpful thing is that she really did edit all of those transcripts. And so there's big chunks missing in the middle of an interview. And so it allows for a lot of imagination and filling in, and kind of gives you the license to do anything in those moments, because clearly she said things that she then didn't want the public to ever know about. And what is that? What were those things? Along with a lot of really interesting tidbits that are, I mean, there are parts from the interviews that are direct quotes of what she actually said in the interview. So, I mean, some of it is like poetry almost, like her description of the assassination. She says it was hot, wild, like Mexico. I mean, that's like verbatim what she said. So it was really great to. I feel like working with Pablo, he was always like adapting the material, and we would find things and we'd send them back and forth, and you know, some YouTube video or a piece of a book, and you know, we could just always throw things in that we found, and so some of it's imagination, some of it is, you know, actual material found from the wide variety available online and in books.
Well, that sort of brings up one of the other amazing aspects of the film is the incorporation of the White House tour towards the beginning. And I'm curious, from a technical challenge for all of you, like, how hard was that, and was that one of the more exciting things to sort of pull off, like when you finally saw it? Like, what, I mean, Pablo, if you want to start with, like, your inspiration for that?
Yeah, I was one of the first things I saw about her. I went to Google, YouTube, and it came up immediately, and I couldn't believe that she would actually talk like that. I keep playing it, and then I went to other recordings from her, and it was true. She actually spoke like that, but then I felt that it was so moving and beautiful and fragile and interesting what she was doing. She was very criticized back then after the restoration of the White House, and it had a very interesting sort of how do you say, like historical meaning what she was doing, and also what really sort of interests me is that somehow in the White House tour she talks a lot about Abraham Lincoln and Abraham Lincoln's widow, right? And so it's like a little, somehow she was like describing her own theater. She was talking about herself, about something about what will happen to her, like a foreshadow, like a map of pain of the theater. And I thought it was incredible when she talks about everything that you saw on the film is exactly as it's on the White House tour, and we shot it exactly the same. We really literally framed it exactly as it was shot back then. It was very powerful to me when she would talk about Lincoln's widow, and the way that, and then we incorporated later the scene on the ambulance about the other president that had been assassinated also. So everything on the White House, personally for me, it was the way that I got into the story, and I connect with her, with this idea of the mother of this woman, that it was just sort of pushing something that is so hard to understand, but it's just feelings, and it's something that is on her eyes, I think. There's something so interesting, because it's, even though she could say many things, you would never really understand her. And that level of mystery, and that level of love and beauty and care for history, legacy, it's not just on the story that we sort of look at it just 5 or 10 days after destination. I think it's older, and it started probably before she was a first lady. But one of the brightest moments is the White House tour, where all this sort of beauty and splendor, it's there. So you need that splendor to show the other side for the contrast, I guess.
And that sort of the question for you, Natalie, and not to sort of overthink it, but is it harder than we would think to sort of try to recreate it, but still be playing a character that you're giving emotions to at the same time? Is it?
It was actually really helpful that we recreated it exactly, because it made me, I think it forced me to study it in an exact way of like the voice and the cadences and where she stumbled and what made her pause and hesitate and be, what it seemed like she was trying to show to the public. And it was such a great addition, because that was not in the original script. That was something that Pablo really added, and it was, at first I didn't really understand how it connected to the rest of it, but then it was such an amazing opportunity to show, of course, who she was before the tragedy, so that we had some sort of, sense of this person in this very privileged position, really where her biggest concern is showing to the American people that she can be likable, or that she's not some elitist snob spending their tax money in frivolous ways, and also someone who's so obsessed with beauty. Pablo was talking to me about, like, she just loves beauty so much that he used to have me say in a lot of scenes, I love beauty.
We took him out.
It never, I think I said it in like every scene.
Yeah.
And it didn't come out once in the movie, but it was great just to establish that as a person who's just such an aesthete, who then experiences the ugliest thing possible and how you have to face that. And then of course, like Pablo was saying, that sort of foreboding sense of something, and she talks about, you know, having to move out of the White House, that the First Lady has to leave, and what the White House did to Abraham Lincoln, and all of that. So I think you get a sense, really, of her sense of agency, that even in that short time in the White House, she really accomplished this massive undertaking, and her real understanding of self, that she was this sort of liability on the campaign trail, where everyone thought she was this French-speaking, you know, haute couture-wearing snob, that they were kind of hiding away because it made Kennedy like less relatable. And then all of a sudden she was in office and the entire country was copying her, and there were mannequins of her. So that sort of understanding of that transition and her place, that she could kind of assume this role of queen, shows, I think, her consciousness there.
Well, I'm actually curious, sort of going down that line, when you were researching the role, and whether you were listening to interviews or just watching films about her, was there anything that really surprised you about her that you didn't know before, that you sort of felt you needed sort of to do the part? And actually the question for Pablo too is, like, when you were doing research, was there anything that wasn't in the script that you had sort of discovered that helped you make the movie? About Jackie and herself.
There was a lot. I really didn't know much about her, I think, except for the very sort of superficial understanding of her as our sort of Warhol icon of, like, you know, the hair, the style, the elegance, you know, not anything really considering her as a human being. And I think reading about her made me really get a sense of her wit and her, you know, I think she had that sort of like French kind of nasty humor, you know, where like everyone said that they would like want to sit next to her at the dinner party because she'd say the like kind of mean, funny thing about, you know, and you read about how, you know, like Khrushchev couldn't stand Kennedy, but was like totally enamored by Jackie, and same with de Gaulle, and, you know, basically the whole world, all of these leaders, she had this real intelligence and sophistication and wit that really kind of helped him internationally. And then just this construction of the story, the taking authorship for her own life is so ahead of the times. I mean, I think everyone does it now with their social media or whatever, presents an image to the world that they want, how they want the world to see them. But she did it, 50 years ago, really constructing a story that has lasted, that she understood that history is just the best fairy tale you tell, has nothing to do with the actual facts.
Very true. Mickey, I wanted to ask you, because you brought this up, and I think Ali just alluded to it, those, how timely you thought the movie was the script was when you first got it. I'm just curious, what about that do you think, like, how you think the movie resonates today with people, like, in that regard?
I think there couldn't be a better time right now for the movie to come out. I think I feel I'm so proud of the movie. I'm so proud of the work that Pablo and Natalie did, and one of my jobs was just to make sure that whatever they were doing every day was to connect like they did, and it shows on screen. It's an unbelievable performance. But today it feels like this movie, when I watch it, I feel so proud to be an American. I feel really that the White House really meant something, and I think Jackie and what she was fighting for the legacy and all that, and we've gone a long way from that. And I thought what Michelle Obama did a couple weeks ago it was unbelievable, and the way she was speaking reminded me of what Jackie, how she was talking in the movie in that way. And I just had some pride. I just felt again at that time, I felt like, you know what, there is a voice for us right now, and there was at that time too. And I think it's really a perfect time to come out, and I can't wait for December and for people to see it, because I do hope that we get back to a place like that.
We definitely want to take some questions from the audience. So if anyone has any, you sir, right there.
Sure. You mentioned that the TV stuff was not in the original script. What were some of the other kind of structural changes that you made in shooting and editing?
Pablo, just to give you a hint, gave me an example, gave me a direction early on that said, act as if any scene can be any number in the script.
Yeah.
Like, don't regard it as, like, the scenes are what they are, which is
Yeah,
great.
it happens sometimes that you're on a set and then the actors could ask you where we're coming from, where we're going. And we were working just with pieces. It was like a slice of memory. And so that's what I guess it's frightening at the same time, because it's hard to hold on to something, but I think the White House tour opened us many doors. For example, the Casals concert also came from there. Because after I saw the White House tour, I realized that actually Pablo Casals really played there, and it's a record that they released that year. So you can play the record, and we got the rights, and actually the music that sounds the original Pablo Casals playing on the White House would really upset the cellist that came from the Paris Philharmonic because he wants to play it, and I was like, I'm sorry, we had the original. but well, it was, and then it opened doors as well to try to understand really what Mickey was saying, I guess, which is I think this is a story of the role of a woman, I guess, and how things are shaped by that strength that is different than the one that we have, and I think it's interesting to see that. And it personally was the first time that I have I make a movie with a female role as the main role, so everything was different for me. And not only in English, but also, I guess that's harder to do, to me at least, to try to see that feminine sort of strength and the role of the part. Because what I think it happens at the beginning, all the characters would sort of try to protect her, and what it really happened is that she protected everyone. Mm-hmm. And she's the one that opened this huge umbrella, and everybody would stick to her, and sort of walk and push and do what she does. And yeah, I don't know, it's hard to know. I don't remember exactly what it was that we brought in, but one of the things that I do remember was the point of view from the journalist, because it was based on Theodore White interview for Life magazine, and I don't know if you remember, but I keep asking Billy to play that from a different place, not to the guy that is sort of, talking to, the ex-first lady and so scared, and he just doesn't want to be there. And that was interesting to play from there, and a lot of material came from that friction that we created in between Jackie and the journalist. But again, it's just, I think it's a movie about pieces, and the only way that we connect those pieces in the editing with Sebastian was through emotional sort of doors and paths and the eyes. I think that's why we're so close to Natalie. It's just, there's a lot of super close-ups, and those are just trying to have a connection to someone's eyes. Because every information, every thing that we could express with words or images, it has a limitation, and there's nothing more unlimited than someone's eyes, and those were the doors, I think.
Any other? You in the back?
I think it's great to see you and Peter again together. And also, I just want to ask you about that relationship between Bobby and her, and also John, her character, how you guys framed that, the decorator. I thought that was amazing too.
Yeah, it was wonderful working with, actually, it was by accident, but almost all the actors I had worked with before, which was kind of wonderful because we didn't rehearse, so really, I think a little bit with the journalist. But I worked with Peter before, and with Greta, and with John Hurt, and I'd known Bill Billy for a really long time. We've never worked together, but I've known him since I was like 15 or 16. So it was nice because there was like already some sort of history and I mean, obviously with the journalist or the priest, there's not really a history in the movie, but there's a sort of emotional connection and comfort with, especially the kind of work that Pablo, encouraged us towards, which is often improvisational and really, takes you in different directions than you might instinctively go toward. So it was really wonderful to work with them, and I felt like it was a great thing in Noah's script too, that you sort of see her through these different relationships, because it allowed, I think, one of the things it's very unusual to see is a woman getting to be a lot of different things, and often we see women in movies defined by their roles, defined as the wife, like defined by their role relative to a man. It's pretty common to see like an all-male movie with like a female role that is the wife who's like on the phone, like, honey, are you okay? And this is a story about someone who's maybe known as a wife, known as a mother, but we get to see her be so many different things through these different relationships, including herself, the relationship with herself. When you do see her alone, when you do see her, which is most of the time, you're seeing her dealing with herself and her own identity and crisis of identity at this moment where her role is taken away. Her role of wife, her role of first lady, that everyone defines her by, and she probably defines herself by to a certain extent, is taken away. And I think it speaks a lot too to a group of men to choose to make that story too. I mean, that's as much as we need female filmmakers, we also need male filmmakers who are interested in telling stories about human beings who happen to be female.
You right there, sir? Oh, you were in there, miss. I'm so sorry. Apologies. You're in the shadow. I couldn't.
Yeah, sorry. Logistically, I understand that you recreated some of the funeral procession, and what about the stuff in Texas, and how much of that did you build? That's a pretty grand and broad subject matter. How did you tackle that?
What did we build?
Like,
Well, I think the question is, how did you guys recreate the
Oh,
yeah.
and how
well,
much of that's practical and how much...
Archival footage, you want to talk
it's a
about that?
combination.
Yeah.
We there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's, I don't know, 15 to 20 shots that come from archival footage that we were able to rescan and then match it with what we were shooting and doing. So there's a lot of things that if you look at it again, you might be able to tell that it's hard. We really worked on matching them. And then the assassination itself is CGI, and we just, it's just like green screen or blue screen. But I guess the main challenge was to do the DC shooting when we were on the streets and sort of having all this procession walking. Until we were shooting, I never really understood how heavy it was and how exposed she was, because and I remember when we were shooting it, I was thinking this was right after the Paris attacks and all that happened in this country as well, is that one of the things that she did by walking is that she said, I'm not gonna, if I stay and if I drive in a tank or in an armored car like they go or whatever, they win, and I'm not gonna give you that. So I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna expose myself, I'll expose the people that I'm with, because they won't let you win with your guns or your fear. So I'm gonna walk and I'm gonna do it by myself. And then I realized that by doing it, because we were on DC and you will just look out and see all these rooftops and all these windows, just like what Bobby says before. And she actually did it, and it was very incredible to experience that. And yeah, we were just there walking.
And actually,
And we should say that we shot in Paris too.
Yeah, I was about to say it.
That
Yeah,
was,
during
I mean, that's
the-
why I think the Paris attacks
During the-
happened like
Right,
a week
after.
before we started shooting.
Yeah.
So we had this, I mean, obviously, it was awful tragedy, but we felt the sense of what happens when something happens.
People from the
collectively.
crew lost friends, and it was like the mood on the set was really heavy.
Yeah, and the studio was like right in the area where all the terrorists had come from, so it was like on lockdown, police lockdown, right when we were starting shooting. So it was really, it was a strange parallel of like how those are collective trauma and collective fear, and people didn't want to go outside. You know, Greta like stayed in my apartment because she was like didn't want to be in the hotel because the hotel was like had like riot guards outside. And I mean, it was
Yeah, we weren't making a movie about people playing golf, right? We were like, yeah, where's the coffee? We were bringing here, we had everything like super dark, and yeah.
Any other questions? You sir, right there in the class.
Amazing performance. I hope you win the second Oscar. What did you love most about playing Jacqueline?
Well, I'm ashamed to say because it's such a horrible event in history and such a sad role. I loved going to work every day. I was like so happy every day, and I think it was the creative process was so amazing that it was. Of course, she's an incredibly inspiring character, and also so. As Pablo's been saying a lot, like for a very known person, she's quite unknown as a human being. So it was incredible to get to explore that and see all these different facets of her. But just the process and the world that Pablo created and getting to experience that every day made it just pure joy, which is a bizarre thing to say about such a obviously devastating, emotional story.
Yeah, and one quick last one. Everyone's got a quick one. Ma'am, you right there in the back.
I was just curious if you've had any contact with the family. Have they commented or seen?
No, we want to share the movie with them, but we don't have more information. We're
Do
waiting.
you ever question the invasion of privacy that you did in the movie?
Well, I don't think that it's obviously not the goal of the film. I think the goal of the film is to humanize historical figures, and I think that also it's been covered so much. It's not exactly like we're going, we're looking into stuff that has been untouched. I think that. Of course, the way we're approaching it is different, but also I think it's very much. I would like to present it as, a piece of fiction. It's obviously inspired by history, but we don't claim that this is what happens. This is an imagination of what happens.
Absolutely. Can you please thank producer Mickey Liddell?